European Union election observers say voting in Zimbabwe has gone smoothly in most areas, but in some it was totally disorganized.
We have seen that especially with the queues are huge differences. In some cases it works very smoothly, but in others we see that it's totally disorganized and that people become angry, that people leave. And we have not found out whether that is coincidence of bad organization in individual places or it's a pattern in certain areas that we have to check when we compare notes with other observers. And that means we have seen, for example, close to Norton in a polling station this afternoon that in polling station 1 it went smoothly, that people had not waited longer than 1 hour. But in the other polling station 100 meters away, the people were waiting there since 6 o'clock this morning and could not have voted until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So there is something going wrong, and hopefully this is not a pattern in certain cases.
Well, let's get to the very latest now from Zimbabwe. Let's speak to CGTN's Valdi Carlsa, who is live with us from the capital, Harare. Valdi, of course, the news tonight is that the two front-runners are neck and neck in this election as votes come in, and of course are both very confident of victory. Just reflecting on your time in the opposition stronghold of Bulawayo, of the opposition MDC, Nelson Chamisa, of course, confident that he has already won this election. Is there room for disappointment in Bulawayo if ZANU-PF remains in power? And are we going to see a peaceful concession of the vote if ZANU-PF wins?
Well, Lindy, it's a bit difficult to answer that question at this stage. As you said, those results are still trickling in. And what the Electoral Commission is doing now is actually announcing results for some of the local government votes that took place. You'll know that Zimbabweans also went to go and vote for around 9,000 councillors, 210 members of parliament. And those are the results we're getting at the moment. We haven't gotten the results for the presidential ballots yet, and we might not get those, the Electoral Commission says, until Saturday. Incidentally, the Commission is briefing the media at the moment with those updated results. We have seen a delay in the announcing of the results, and that might be due to the fact that counting has been incredibly slow, including in places like Bulawayo. I spoke to the provincial electoral chief there, and he said he raised some concerns around how slow this process has been, because what needs to happen is the presidential ballots are dispatched here to the National Results Centre in Harare. They had a cut-off date, and they needed to have sent those ballots by this afternoon. Whether or not they've done that, we'll find out now from the Electoral Commission's briefing. But those results, they need to be verified before they can be released to the public. And of course, when people wait for election results, it causes tension. I spoke to an MP in Bulawayo saying that it's unfair to political parties, it's unfair to the voters who came out in large numbers to come and vote, for them to have to wait. This wait is causing anxiety on the ground. And as you said, both sides have already claimed victory. And that's also causing some tension among people here. We have seen water cannons on the streets of Harare, and we do know that the Home Affairs Minister is also due to brief the media about security preparations, and why he feels the need to do that might be in response to the water cannons that we've seen on the streets of Harare this afternoon. Whether or not the opposition will exceed defeat in Bulawayo is something that we'll have to see. Whether or not they'll take whatever outcomes the Electoral Commission announces is something we'll have to wait and see. They and the main local electoral the domestic electoral monitor already questioning the Electoral Commission's credibility because of this delay in announcing the results, Lindy.
Indeed, the delay, very worrying. And from what you're saying, it sounds as though authorities there are preparing for the worst. Well, of course, though, it's hard to forget the scenes of jubilation back in November last year as the military of Zimbabwe paved the way for the removal of Robert Mugabe. Valdi, do people there acknowledge the possibility of a presidency that is not from ZANU-PF?
I I think that certainly in MDC strongholds and the people that I've spoken to, because I made the journey from Bulawayo to Harare this afternoon, that certainly it would be welcomed, change would be welcomed. Whether or not that is the case in Harare is really something that we'll have to investigate a little bit further. But I do think many Zimbabweans went to the poll yesterday in order to exercise their democratic vote, and they certainly want to see, and they want to show, I think, to the international community that this country has come of age, that since the fall of former President Robert Mugabe, they are able to hold credible, fair elections, something that will be accepted by people on the ground. But we've yet to see how this will play out, and those announcements of the result is getting critical. I walked into the Rainbow Towers here a little bit earlier, and there were plenty of people huddled around TV screens, shouts and jeers as these election results come out. And those are the kind of scenes that are playing out across the country as people anxiously wait for the Electoral Commission to officially announce results.
And Valdi, just very quickly, of course, as you say, you are waiting for that official announcement from the Electoral Commission, but any indication so far as to who might be in the lead?
Well, you know, I've done spot checks at most of the polling stations, particularly in Bulawayo, and as I said, on my journey to Harare, because a lot of these results are posted outside polling stations. So you can kind of get a sense of how people voted just by doing these checks. But incidentally, this is where the MDC has cried foul, saying that around 1 in 5 of these polling stations don't have the results posted up outside. So it's difficult for them to get a sense of who is in the lead. But like you said, both sides are claiming that they're in the lead. Certainly in places like Bulawayo in the Midlands province, Chamisa has quite a big margin, but that might change as the results come in from rural areas. The ZANU-PF has a very, very strong base in the rural areas, and those results aren't in yet, and it's difficult to gauge because I haven't been there to actually go and do these informal checks of polling stations, and none of the local election observers are allowed to announce the results even before the Electoral Commission verifies those results and then releases them to the public. But as I said, it's a bit difficult to tell at this stage, and I think we just have to wait for the results of the rural areas to also be in so that we can then get a clearer picture of how the land lies.
Indeed, an election that is at this point calling for patience. Thank you so much, Valdi Carlser, joining us there live from Harare. And as she says, the Zimbabwean Electoral Commission is expected to make an announcement this evening, but we are still quite far away from getting that final election result.